Welcome back, Playmakers. It is March 4th, another great show day. We have 3 hosts and 3 breakout rooms, starting with...
I'm Jackson Reed, and my breakout room is going to talk a little bit about the WNBA finding the New York Liberty, then it's going to transition into a little MLB lockout talk. Liv, what's going on in your breakout room?
Well, we're going to be talking about all and everything basketball, men's and women's National Player of the Year. Is the AP poll a scam? And a little preview of the Big 12 tournament.
And I'm Caroline Soro, and in breakout room number 3, which is my breakout room, we're going to do a roundtable on softball and baseball. So we'll give you everything you need to know about this year's Kansas softball and baseball teams.
Stay tuned for more, guys.
Yeah, all this and more on Playmakers.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Everybody, welcome to the first rendition of Playmakers Unscripted. This is the first breakout room. I'm the host, Jackson Reed. That's Lily Hennick, Anna Ambrose, and Chad Cushing. So guys, first topic of discussion. In recent WNBA news, the league fined the New York Liberty $500,000, its heftiest fine ever as a league, as a team violated league policy on competitive balance rules by taking charter planes in the WNBA finals this past year. So let's table everybody's thoughts here. What are your thoughts?
I think this is ridiculous. Honestly, I mean, I know the WNBA does not have the kind of center that the NBA has where they get more money, they have more income and revenue and stuff, but that shouldn't allow the WNBA to have the ability to not take these chartered flights. I think it's ridiculous that they can't do that.
I think it's unfair as well. These players work just as hard as the NBA, and their owners are just wanting to do something a little nice for them. Why can't we treat them the same as NBA? So it is interesting because there have been other issues as well with the WNBA. Besides the Liberty, there was a trip to Napa taken, and that was technically against the CBA. So this isn't the first issue we've seen with the CBA rules being kind of broken. So it's definitely an interesting conversation. And $500,000 talking about the league being gone or taking away the ownership is just way too extreme. They were just, trying to take a different flight to
and
their
like
game.
you said, it wasn't just the $500,000 that they were suggesting. It was also losing every draft pick you've ever seen, suspending ownership, grounds for termination of the franchise. I mean, that's just extreme at that point.
Really crazy.
I think, I believe the part of the bargaining agreement that was broken was trying to explain that it would give certain teams an unfair advantage. I think that part is silly as well. It's my favorite quote from Moneyball. There are rich teams and there are poor teams. And that's just part of how leagues work. The New York Yankees are going to have more things at their disposal than a lower team in baseball. And as a free agent, as a player in the league, that's something that entices you to play for a team like the Liberty, one of the more up-and-coming teams in the league. They have one of the best players, Sabrina Ionescu. They're getting more money in a bigger market. That's just something that comes with being on a different team. So from that standpoint, I think that's taking away from a little bit more of the parity in the WNBA, and that we're having to put a cap on what teams are able to do for their players.
And I don't see the argument that if they take a chartered flight, what's the difference between taking a private flight? I mean, how is it going to affect their game level? What is that going to do for them? I don't see why that is an argument being made too.
All right, y'all. This moves into our next topic, and one that this Mr. Chad Cushing over here is very, very, very passionate about. Major League Baseball is in hot water, to say the very least, as there seems to be no movement on the CBA and the lockout situation with baseball. So this poses the question. And our next topic, where does America's pastime go from here?
Well, I guess I can answer first. As a fan, it's very frustrating. I see it as, you see Rob Manfred go up on the stage to give his little speech about talking about what's going on, and he's smiling, he's laughing, he's joking around. He's saying, "I tried so hard to get these things in." This is a lockout that Rob Manfred initiated. The players did not go on strike. I think everyone's comparing that to 1994, the last time MLB had a stoppage of play. The players are not on strike. They are being locked out by the owners. We were talking about an owner or a commissioner who put the league on lockout, waited 43 days to give his first proposal with the players union on a new CBA, and then gives a pseudo 5 p.m. deadline on a random day in March to try and, if you don't have it done, the season's canceled. I understand it's a negotiation tactic, and he's trying to force the players' hand.
He knows what he's doing.
But from the player's standpoint, I stand by. I like it. I like what they're doing. They're not budging just because he's giving them these silly deadlines and rules to follow. It's frustrating to watch. It is.
I will say that Rob Manfred is a bum. He is the sole reason why this is happening right now, and I agree with you. The players are doing exactly what they need to be doing right now, and honestly, there's not a whole lot they can do unless just sitting through these 16-hour worthless meetings, but it's not going anywhere. They said those 2 regular season series are not going to be made up. I mean, I don't even know when we're going to see a next game. I told everyone last week, I was like, you have a better chance of watching a game on the video game MLB The Show than actually going out and watching one. You have a better chance of doing that.
I think it's really unfair for the players and as a fan. And they've also talked about it's not just affecting the players and the fans, but it's also affecting people who work in the stadiums.
100%.
And so I saw something today that you're going to mention. Which is fine.
This morning the Players Association came out with something. They're launching a $1 million fund for workers affected by the MLB owners lockout. So this fund will be administered by Major League Baseball Players Association and the AFL-CIO and distributed to stadium workers and others who face financial hardship through no fault of their own due to the MLB franchise owners lockout.
Which is great because, I mean, these are people's jobs, and
Yeah.
it's so unfair that
They have no
just because
income.
of people's ego that they can't work.
Yeah.
And so what I've kind of noticed over social media is the minor league teams. So I love watching that they're like, we're not associated with this.
Exactly.
Come to our games. We start soon. Even college baseball too.
Yeah.
Definitely needs to be in the spotlight right now with MLB.
Yeah, I think Jackson had mentioned earlier that MLB Network is starting to show college games on there now.
Good, as they should. So
Yeah, I mean, if we can take any positive out of this, it's that more avenues of baseball can be highlighted. And I shot opening day for Kansas baseball a couple days ago, and I had a great time because it was the first time I had seen live baseball in so long.
Right.
Usually it's coming up, around March 4th, March 5th. We're getting ready for spring training. They're already playing games, and you're used to seeing all the pitchers and the catchers and going to spring training and all the reporters and all the fun new players you're meeting. And it's just we're having to find other ways to fill that void. And I think that if you're taking away a positive, that is a good thing. College baseball and other sports leagues for baseball can be highlighted.
And we need to keep in mind that this was something that was going to happen to the MLB. This was kind of on its way, but now that it's happening, hopefully we get through it soon. Whatever happens.
4 to 6 years because they can't reach an agreement that will last a extended period of time. So we'll see this again in another 4 to 6 years after they reach an agreement, hopefully sometime soon.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Go ahead. But in the meantime, as we sit with about 20 games left to play in the NBA regular season, the MVP race has heated up and even a newcomer has entered the shuffle. 76ers forward Joel Embiid seems to be the overwhelming favorite in sportsbooks, sitting at -120. Behind him at +260 is Nuggets center Nikola Jokic. Two-time MVP and reigning NBA champion Giannis Antetokounmpo sits at +600, and someone who's rocketed up the sportsbook odds this week has been Ja Morant, boosted by a 52-point performance. His odds currently sit at +1,000. Another team that's been very successful this year is the Chicago Bulls, with their guard DeMar DeRozan sitting at +1,200 odds. So let us know. Tag us on Twitter at PlaymakersKU. Who has the best odds in the top 5? Morant, DeRozan, Giannis, maybe Joel Embiid with the -120 or Nikola Jokic at plus whatever. I forget what I said. Anyways, tag us on Twitter at PlaymakersKU. And now let's throw it over to Riley Kramer. She has more on Art Briles.
What's up, Playmakers? I'm Riley Kramer, and for this week's breaking news, we have some coaching controversy. Art Briles, the former head coach at Baylor University, who was fired in 2016, got another opportunity to be on the field with Grambling State University when 4 days after being hired, he resigned from the position. This was mainly because his history while coaching at Baylor was brought to the public's attention once again, and no one thought he deserved to handle another college coaching football job. This all stems from a campus-wide sexual assault investigation, bringing up the mishandling of the allegations by Baylor's athletic staff and the overall inappropriate culture the team promoted in order to sell the school to recruits. Over a 4-year period in Briles' time at Baylor, 52 rapes by more than 30 players were reported. According to the NCAA report, Briles failed to meet even the most basic expectation of how a person should react to the kind of conduct at issue in this case. As a campus leader, the head coach is held to a higher standard, and he completely failed to meet this standard. This same scandal led to the firing of University President Ken Starr and Athletic Director Ian McCaw. Grambling State's head coach, however, Hugh Jackson, defended Coach Briles and his decision to hire him, though he's received tons of backlash. Legally speaking, a coach has a responsibility to report misconduct when they hear it. In an incident where Art Briles and Ian McCaw were informed of female students' rape allegations committed by 5 football players, neither of them passed along the information to the proper authorities. Briles and McCaw failed to act responsibly with the information, and it led to many more women getting sexually assaulted and abused by players at the university. The culture Briles promoted by ignoring these issues as a head coach shows that he isn't equipped to handle these traumatic issues at a college level, and he shouldn't be put in a position for this to happen again. Currently, 2 former Baylor players are serving prison sentences on charges of sexual assault, and another was indicted by grand jury on a similar charge. Though Briles was fired in 2016, Baylor is still dealing with a lawsuit where 15 women have come forward and said the discriminatory policies used in handling sexual assault reports heightened the risk of sexual assault. The Grambling State position is the first coaching job Briles has been offered since he was fired, but many people think that he shouldn't have been offered that job at all. I have to say, I don't think he's done enough to prove he can handle the intensity that comes with being a college-level leader if he can't put the safety of students first. That's all we have for this week's breaking news.
What's up, Jayhawks? Welcome to the second breakout group of men's and women's basketball. We have Playmakers, Kristen Howell, Take a Sides, Carson Shea, produced by Myra Peterson, and me, the host, Liv Misek. So March is a huge month of basketball, so let's dive right into it. First, we have National Player of the Year, where I know Maya is going to run her mouth about who she absolutely admires for National Player of the Year. Maya, take it away.
Thank you for the great introduction. I've been talking about this subject probably for the last 2 to 3 weeks, either with Jackson Reed or anyone that stops me and talks about Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. And my choice is very easy. SEC Player of the Year, SEC Defensive Player of the Year, and honestly, the most efficient player in women's basketball right now is Aaliyah Boston. So really, is there a competition between Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah?
I do not think so.
I mean, I'm going to go with Caitlin Clark. She is so fun to watch, and she leads the entire NCAA in points per game and assists per game, which is insane. I don't see many players that do that. She's so electric, and I think that she deserves to win it.
You know, it's kind of hard. So I had a hot take on Wednesday on Good Morning Players that I don't even think Caitlin Clark is in my top 3 rankings, because we have Baylor's Nalissa Smith, who is another great player all around. So I'm going Aaliyah Boston, Nalissa Smith, and then Caitlin Clark, because I feel like National Player of the Year should be the all-around player. Aaliyah Boston, perimeter, check.
Everything.
In the paint, check. Right.
Okay.
Exactly. And that's what makes the best players. And, you know, the SEC is the toughest conference to play in. So your National Player of the Year, if she's able to do the numbers she's doing right now, has to be Aaliyah Boston.
Has to be. And now for men's, I feel like everybody has to go Oscar Tshiebwe. You just have to.
I agree. I'm going Oscar Tshiebwe on my end, even though we are the other blue blood school. You know?
I mean, 17 points a game, 15 rebounds.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say it's Ochad just because of bias, but I'm not going to lie. I definitely got to go with Oscar.
Okay.
His rebounding is insane, so.
Yeah, you don't get many players like that who do average double points, and then you have double digits rebounds. It's just amazing to see.
Electric, literally electric on the floor. Also, I mean, your top 3 are electric on the floor, but we had Claire Decatur actually talk to the Jayhawk fans. Maybe they were a little biased, but Claire, we're gonna see what did you think about this man on the street, and what did the Jayhawks have to say?
That's right, Jayhawk fans will always be Jayhawk fans. Let's take a look to see what they had to say about our men's MVP and women's MVP of the year. Artie, who is your college basketball men's player of the year?
I think it's Ochai, honestly.
Ochai Abaji.
Ochai.
Ochai, definitely.
Okay, why would you say that?
He just creates so many opportunities for his teammates, but he's also just a reliable player overall.
He's playing really well right now. He's leading our team to victory. I mean, the team does play poorly when he doesn't play well, and I kind of see that as a reason why he's crucial to us actually winning the Big 12 and actually doing well in March Madness.
Just because he's carrying one of the best teams in the country, top 5, averaging over 20 points a game. Is definitely front runner for best player of the year.
Yep. Ochai, because he's hot.
Oscar Shibwe.
Okay, women's wise.
Women's wise, there are a lot of good players too. Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston.
Honestly, Iowa's Caitlin Clark. She's a baller.
Caitlin Clark, Iowa's been fantastic this year. Caitlin Clark's been great. Nation's leading scorer, nation's leading passer. I'm going to go Caitlin Clark.
Okay, so obviously, like I said, Jayhawk fans are going to be biased. They're going to pick Ochai Abaji, but we have a little bit of Oscar Shibwe in there, so you know there's some logic. But now let's turn over to the AP poll. Is it a scam or is it not a scam? There's a lot of talk about rankings and top 25 teams. Take it away.
For the women's side, I want to say it's kind of even, and it makes sense when you're in the top 5, like you see here. Louisville's at 4, Baylor's at 5, which has snuck into that top 10. But number 6 is probably my favorite ranking, which is LSU, for the simple fact that they've been building this program up. They've shown themselves week to week, and that number 6 spot is very important. But beyond that, that's where it starts to get a little shaky. UConn has been in the top 10, top 12 teams from the beginning of the season, but they've lost more times probably this year than the last 5 years, and it's been the teams that they shouldn't be losing to. So I'm confused on that end.
Inconsistent.
Exactly. It's like, what are we doing? So do they deserve that top 10 spot? I personally don't think they do. But on the men's side, I know there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think there's so much recency bias, especially there's a good team that has a bad loss early in the season. Later on, they have just a good win. They just jump up super high. I feel like you can't forget about the bad loss that they took just a few weeks before that. So that's one thing I don't like. I think it is a scam.
Honestly, I am kind of in the air with AP polling. I, in a sense, don't understand it, but at the same time, I just really don't understand it, because basically 3 and 6 of Baylor and KU, right?
Right.
We just lost to Baylor, and then we go down 1, while Baylor goes up like a couple spots.
Exactly.
And it's like, what, when the other top 5 teams basically stayed the same while they lost to like lower teams in the poll. And you're just like, how does that happen? Like, we had a harder opponent than the other people, yet we get like a consequence.
I agree. That number 1 spot bothers me. I don't know about anyone else, but Gonzaga being number 1 still, like, I don't get it. That's something we should probably tweet about. So be with us on that hashtag Playmakers AP poll conversation.
I think it has to be a scam. Yeah. let me decide the AP.
Yeah.
And then we'll see where life takes us.
Yes.
Has to be. Well, yeah, definitely stay tuned to our Twitter for that conversation. But obviously, March is basketball.
Yeah.
Also, Women's History Month. Women in sports. We love that. So we all decided and figured out who we admire most in the realm of basketball for women. So Kristen, you take it away on that.
Well, I'm going to have to go with one of my all-time favorites. She's been an inspiration to me. I've watched her growing up just playing. I watched her coach my hometown babe, Becky Hammond. I mean, she's also just part of the recent WNBA Hall of Fame class.
That's right.
She's just overall stellar. I think it's coming full circle for Becky Hammond if she's going to be the new Aces head coach. Yeah. Just love her. Carson, what do you think?
All right, well, I'm gonna go with a commentator here. I absolutely love Doris Burke. That's what I want to do one day.
We're going back to back with great hitters.
I would love to be a commentator one day, and I love watching basketball games when Doris is commentating. And she's even on 2K, like when I'm playing 2K, I get to hear her voice. That's so cool. And she was the first woman to call a New York Knicks game, which is so cool. And then she got to be on ESPN, and now you hear her voice like every single week, and I just think that's so cool. Because you know who it is. Like, you're watching the game, you recognize her voice, and I think that's really cool. So.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of a different route, and I'm going to choose an active player in college basketball. I don't know why, and I think it may have been like during COVID. I really admired this person, but it's actually before COVID. USA team, Maya, correct me if I'm wrong. I chose Cameron Brink out of
Ooh,
Stanford.
that's
And
a good-
correct
that's a
me if
good
I'm wrong,
pick, actually.
She played with Haley Van Lith and Paige Beckers in the U.S. team.
I believe so.
I think
yeah.
she was on the same team as them, but that's kind of when I started admiring her. But over COVID, she was always on my For You page for TikTok, and I just really admired, especially in today's society. People look at social media, Instagram, Twitter, to see like the personality of an athlete and like their lifestyle off the court. And I really admired her lifestyle off the court. She's just bougie and fun. I really enjoyed that. Obviously, she's coming off of a title team last year, so my eyes are really on her this year. She's averaging 13 points, 8 rebounds. I love Cameron Brink. Plus, she's like best friends with Steph Curry. So
That's
I just like that's just I know, Maya.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with the whole entire combination of everyone. And LSU, I mentioned them in rankings. Being from Texas, both of us Texas girls, Baylor to LSU. The woman who has made women's basketball so much fun throughout my childhood, Kim Mulkey. But then I had to give her a couple of players too, this big three, Kayla Pointer and Alexis Morris. They created this big house LSU team that no one can really compare to them when it comes to spirit, passion, and experience. Alexis Morris actually played with Kim Mulkey when she was a freshman at Baylor and now has joined her in LSU, while Kayla Pointer has a story that I just feel like if you haven't heard her story, go ahead and check it out for the simple fact that she's a fighter. And it's no better than having a player that trusts you from freshman year to senior year, and a fighter and a player to make Kim Mulkey one of the most inspirational coaches of all time, in my opinion.
And
So that's my pick.
She is a vibe.
Yeah, she's always dressed to impress.
No, seriously, Kim Mulkey is a vibe, definitely. Okay, but next we have the Big 12 tournament, which is next week for both men's and women's basketball in Kansas City. But Big 12 tournament, Maya, women's. Let's talk about it. Baylor. They making a run for it?
Honestly,
What's the deal? What's the deal?
I'm gonna give you short and sweet because I know you have a lot to preview for next week.
Yeah.
But Baylor's women's basketball is either you make history either way. You win, Nikki Cohen gets her first Big 12 championship in her first year of coaching and extends that 12-year period for Baylor. They lose, it becomes the first Big 12 championship Baylor has not been able to secure in the last 12 years. So that's what I have for women, so be on the lookout because me and Lily Wachowski will be on the scene for that next week. But for you, this is all about you and Sydney Clark for men's.
Well, yeah, Cindy Clark and I will be covering men's, a Big 12 tournament in Kansas City at the T-Mobile Center. But I was going to say, if women's Baylor, if they win, and men's Baylor wins,
oh no.
I don't want that to happen. No. But I do feel like Baylor and KU will be in the finals, depending on how this weekend's games go with rankings and stuff, how the bracket plays out. I could see both those teams being in the finals, which would be interesting just because we are 50-50 with them, and we beat them by a lot the first time and then lost to them. So it's gonna be. Do you guys think? Who do you think will be?
I'm not gonna lie. I have Kansas and Texas Tech.
Texas,
I think Texas Tech could
Texas
definitely be
Tech
the
is- They're a
I
dark
wouldn't be
horse.
surprised if they're in. If they're not, I'd be
Texas-
like, okay, but if they are, I'm like,
Texas Tech is scary.
Yeah, they just-
I think I'm more scared.
Did it throughout the season, so I think they could definitely make a run for it.
Yeah, no, but stay tuned because, like she said, Maya and Lily will be at the women's games covering, and Sydney and I will be at the men's games covering. But we'll get to that all next week. There's a lot of basketball. It's March Madness.
Happy March.
Yes, happy March.
But that's all the basketball we have today. But after the next commercial, we're gonna go to the next breakout room, which will be baseball and softball.
From adversity, we rose. We made history and became pioneers, voyagers, champions, Jayhawks. And when our chant rises, haunting and hallowed, Jayhawks are telling the world what's near. Victory.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Baseball and Softball Roundtable. Today, I am joined by Lily Witkowski, Sydney Clark, and Gus Balo. So let's go ahead and kick things off with some Kansas softball today. The Jayhawks are currently 7-8 on the season right now, and they are playing against Arizona State, but are unfortunately down 6-0 in the top of the 5th inning. So they're going to have to get the bats rolling if they want to come out on top in this one. So, guys, what are some of your thoughts about softball season so far right now?
From what I saw right away, first game to now, that this season is going to have a strong emphasis on growth and production. There's a lot of young players on this team, but they are talented players as well.
I mean, but I'm going to hit on those pitching. Pitching is a big one for Kansas softball right now, and when you don't have a good pitching circle, you can't really get really deep into a game, and you can't get really far, so you're really going to have a strong offense. But what we're seeing in this game right now against Arizona State is that we're not having a strong offense. We're currently down 6-0. And so what we need for KU is growth, like Lily said, and it's a lot of growth that we're going to have to see throughout the season. But what's good about KU softball is the depth the team has when it comes to utility and well-rounded players. There's a lot of players who can do more than one thing, which can come really good when we have a smaller roster, about 20 players. So
I think I was just going to add too. I mean, they're a talented team. There's a lot of young players on the team, definitely compared to last year. And they still have about 6 players from last year's team that are now in the starting lineup. So there's a lot of talent on this team, but again, it takes time, especially against a team like Arizona State, top 25 team in the country. UCLA, again, another top 25, top 5 team in the country. So there's a lot of talent that they're playing against, I should say, in the next couple of days. And I think this is a moment where they can grow and learn from that as they head into the Big 12.
And you said it takes time, too. So, softball season's long. Softball season just started. So, this growth that we're going to see, it's going to take time, but there's time in the season for it to happen.
Oh, it's definitely early, and I'm just going to go back and hit on Sydney's point about pitching, which is also something we're seeing with the KU baseball team right now, and the team is just on an absolute slide. I mean, they dropped their home opener against Missouri State after losing their series over the weekend, and they're currently down 11-0 to Michigan State in the top of the 6th inning, and so pitching is obviously a big factor in that. And just kind of transitioning over to the baseball side of things, what are your guys' thoughts on the baseball team?
Yeah, I mean, like you talked about, pitching is definitely a big part of KU baseball right now, and they're trying to, they're a young pitching core, so they're getting into their rhythm a little bit here, and you're playing against teams like Michigan State, pretty solid team. There's a lot you can learn from, and I think there's definitely a lot of positives you can still take, even though if the score may not be the way you want it. There's still a lot of positives you can take heading into the weekend. You still got a whole weekend to play in Minneapolis.
I think based on the last few games, there's been a consistent theme of staying down when they are down. They really need to get over that hump and figure out what is going to work on their offensive end, making those adjustments in the box and knowing what type of pitching they're going up against.
And I think you're going to see grit from this team. I think that's a big word you can use throughout the season. You're going to see grit in the pitching circle, and you're going to see grit in the batter's box, because right now, with the pitching not being very strong, if you have no offense to ever back you up right now, like we don't have in this game, you're not going to get far at all. So, you're going to see growth from KU softball, you're going to see growth from KU baseball, and so right now the word is growth for everyone. So, good thing the season just started, and good thing it's long.
Yeah, it seems like growth is definitely a common theme, and like we've all mentioned, it is still early. And Gus, that's going to bring me back to you. What are your early predictions for this KU baseball team and College World Series at the end of the road?
Yeah, so I think KU baseball, I think they can grow a lot from this year, and they're going to be playing some pretty tough teams. The Big 12 is one of the best, probably the best conference in college baseball. I mean, you got Texas, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, just to name a few teams. Even West Virginia at times has been really solid. I think overall there are 2 teams that I'm looking forward to in college baseball. I'll throw in a couple extra as well. You got to start with Texas, number 1 in the country, 8-0 right now. They're going to be playing this weekend. Texas is a really good team. I mean, they're really talented. 1 through 9 can hit. And they also have a very good pitching staff. They're going to be a very tough team to beat coming in June in Omaha. Ole Miss is another really good team as well. They're number 2 right now in the country. But a team that I know that they lost their first game of the year, but you got to mention Arkansas. Arkansas is very talented up and down. Yes, they're 4-2, but they're still a top 5 team in the country. And when they're firing on all cylinders, especially offensively, there's very few teams that can beat them. So Arkansas is another team I'm going to watch. I think the top 3, though, Texas, Ole Miss, and Arkansas, I think, are the best right now.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Ladies, I'm going to bring this back to you. What are we thinking in terms of softball?
Oh,
Well,
Early predictions,
yes.
but we're going to give them.
It is March. Yes, you have March Madness, but I can't forget it is baseball and softball season. So me and Cindy Clark are going to bring you our top 4 teams that we think are going to make the trip to OKC this season.
Okay, so I'm excited about this first one. It's my number 4 pick. It's my Cinderella seed is what I'm going to say, because Stanford softball right now is kind of behind the scenes being a playmaker, but they're not a front runner, they're not ranked, but they, for the first time, through 3 back-to-back no-hitter games with Reagan Krause, Alana Walter, and Molly Miller. They face off against Oklahoma State today, which will be a pretty good game to see how they're going to compete later on in the season with those bigger ranked teams. But Stanford softball is the definition of depth in their pitching circle. When you have 3 pitchers who can pitch back-to-back no-hitter games by each single one, I mean, that's astonishing in itself, and I think it's going to say enough about the Stanford team. We're just going to need to see a bigger offense from them later on in the season.
Going off of the pitching theme, for my number 4, I gotta give it to Mizzou. I know, KU Mizzou, that's how I say. But they're my underdog team as well. They have all returning starters. They have 7 fifth years returning to this program, and no pitching changes within that circle. So this team is very well adjusted to what these pitchers can bring to the plate. As well, if you have 7 fifth years returning and all returning starters, that means that all those players really have faith in what this program can be. And it's not going to take one player, but I do want to mention that Jenna Laird had 8 home runs last season, 38 RBIs, and batted a .369. So she's going to be a key offensive player for this Mizzou team. But they're going to be the underdog, and they're just going to squeeze in there for that OKC trip.
But Mizzou's a gritty team, too. I mean, they lost last year in the run for the title, but they lost to James Madison, and they don't have Odyssey Alexander anymore. So Mizzou really can make a farther run in this tournament. And even though they're across the border, I could agree with you. I honestly would love to see them fight for the title this year. So, good pick.
Now off to your number 3.
Florida State. Honestly, a good team every single year. I never have any complaints about them. But right now, they have a strong pitching staff and a strong defense. They have a solid freshman standout on Catherine Sandercock, who was a big reason they made a run for the title last year against Oklahoma. And even though they fell short, she was the reason they made it that far, and she was the reason they stayed in the winner's bracket for so long. And when you have a pitcher like that who can come in as a close, but who can come in as a starter and still produce the same numbers and still be a stellar pitcher, I mean, that in itself is going to carry you a long way. But I just need to see a stronger offense from them, but they did have a pretty good win the other day in a walk-off, so we'll see.
I think going off that, they're really going to have to learn to adjust to losing those experienced seniors on their team when it comes to offense.
It's going to be curious to see how they are without Catherine Sandercock next year.
Yes, 100% agree. For my number 3, I got to give it to the UCLA Bruins. I would have them a little higher up, but they did lose Rachel Garcia, so this team is really going to have to adjust to the fact that they don't have basically the number 1 pitcher in the nation right now, but their lineup is still stacked. They have Elia Jordan, Maya Brady, Brianna Priaz, and Kinsley Washington. When you have a solid defense that are going to make those extra plays to get those extra outs, and you have a few key offensive players, you're going to have a strong run and be a powerhouse team throughout the season.
And like you said, I mean, they probably are the definition of an experienced roster from head to toe. Like, their lineup is insane. It's all experienced.
Stacked.
And their pitching circle, even though they're losing their star, Rachel Garcia, you have a healthy new pitcher, and so I think you're going to see a good team from them.
All right, for your number 2,
Washington Huskies. Honestly, their softball program astonishes me every single year, but it's Gabby Plains last year in the mound for them. She's a senior from Australia who's consistent in the circle, but she's a strong lefty. And I don't see a lot of strong left-handed pitchers, and when you face against a left-hander, it's different. It's a different adjustment for the batter and all the categories, but they lost Sid Space last year, who was a strong middle infield for them in the shortstop position, but they have a strong infield now, with Kinsey Fielder coming in, who was Flow Softball's #1 recruit last year, who was a decommit from Mizzou, who then went to Washington, so I think she made a good choice going there, but you have a strong pitching staff for them as well, and a strong defense. And I think the strong thing I'd say about Washington is that defense wins championships. And in this case, this can really, really show for them, because you have Kelly Lynch, who is a pitcher and a first baseman. You have Bailey Klinger at a third baseman, who is a strong offensive hitter. But all the way around, they're just a well-rounded team, and I think they're going to go very far.
All right. For my number 2, I got to go with Oklahoma State. This year, they In 2019, they became my favorite underdog team, but they're no longer an underdog team. They are playoff bound, gonna make it to the tournament, I think, for the next 5 years. They really maximize on signing those transfers this year. They have All-American Miranda Ellis, who came from Texas, Julia Cottrell, who is a catcher, and who is from Florida, and then midfielder Morgan Day. And having that experience on your roster is just gonna give you that extra oomph you need to win powerhouse games against UCLA and Alabama, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But for your number one,
Oklahoma. How can you not choose the OU Sooners with Patty Gasso as your head coach? That woman is the definition of a GOAT. So right now, though, when I talk about pitching, I'm a big pitching person. So like when you have a strong pitching mound, like you can go all the way. So Jordan Ball, a freshman pitcher, honestly, right-handed ace pitcher of the year. Should be pitcher of the year probably. National Gatorade Player of the Year. 6-0 in the circle so far. Big 12 Pitcher of the Week back-to-back. Has had multiple recognitions this year. And like I think I was reading a stat the other day, she has 63 strikeouts and has no losses already. That's insane. You're a freshman coming in, pitching D1 softball for the OU Sooners. She's showing some Paige Parker status for me right now. I'm a big Paige Parker fan who's from my hometown area. But you have Jocelyn Allo in your offensive lineup, and she just tied Lauren Chamberlain, former OU, for most home runs in a career for the NCAA. And she's a beast from Hawaii, and she's going to produce some big offensive plays. She's clutch in any position. Not any position, but she's clutch in every at-bat she needs. When she produces high, and it produces likely more often. We have a stacked roster with Jada Coleman doing it all. I mean, the definition of an athlete on the defense and offensive side. You have Kinsey Hansen behind the plate, which you also have her as a big hitter in the lineup. And I don't know how you can't choose OU right now. I mean, national championships from last year. I think they're going to win a natty this year. I could say they win a natty every single year because they have the highest odds. But their biggest strength right now is Patty Gasso. Yep. When you have that type of coach who knows that game that well, consistently has a good recruiting class, they're a beast on and off the field, and I think they'll go all the way on the natty.
you talk about pitching here, and this is why my number one, going back to Alabama, you have returner NFCA pitcher Montana Fouts back in the circle for you, who threw a perfect game in the Women College World Series. First time that's happened since 2000. Not only that, they have a few really key offensive players. Yes, a few were lost last year, but you have Kaylee Tao, who was second within the lineup for most RBIs and home runs for Bama. And they're an experienced program. The culture that they have is, you know, you're working hard. Great. At the end of the day, when you come from a school that always wins the football championship, you might as well win the softball championship as well.
But the one thing I have with Alabama, though, and you mentioned it, you mentioned the pitching, is that who are they without Montana? That's my biggest thing, is though they're a great program, they have a great team, I don't know if they have the grit to win all the way. I don't know if they're going to be able to close it out. I mean, you've seen multiple programs, baseball and softball, who can go with one pitcher, and that's fine, and you can do that, but your odds are slim, and you also risk the hurt of hurting Montana, because you can't pitch her the whole year.
But going back to OU, how does your freshman inexperienced pitcher stand up against in the playoffs? The lot of pressure gets her?
Yeah, but she's already starting high
but it's
early
the beginning
already.
of the season.
But she's already producing high numbers.
Are those high numbers going to stay consistent though?
But I think those higher numbers are going to produce her to go better. She's already producing this highly and this likely. It's only the beginning for her.
Before because we can talk about this forever and ever. That's all from us for way too early predictions for the Women's College World Series.
I mean, I guess we're just going to have to see whose predictions hold up in the end. I mean, we've got three pretty good predictions going on here, so stay tuned for that, I guess, in a couple months. And so Leigh took some of these questions to Jayhawk Boulevard to ask what students thought about Kansas softball and baseball and just, you know, their seasons as a whole. So let's go ahead and send it to Soleil before we go back to Liv in the studio.
Thanks, guys. I'm Soleil Rucker, and I'm standing on Jayhawk Boulevard, where I'm going to be asking students their opinions and predictions for this year's baseball and softball season. Can you predict this year's softball record?
21-16.
Yeah, I think they're gonna do pretty great. Definitely gonna have a better season than last season, and I just have great expectations for them. this coming seasons.
I think it's going to be 35-21.
Do you have a favorite player and why?
Angela Price, and just because met her once and she was really cool.
Do you believe that they will place top 5 in the Big 12?
Oh yeah, easily. Might even say like top 4, top 3.
Can you predict this year's KU baseball team's record?
Yeah, I think they're gonna go 32-24. I think they're gonna go 33-23.
This year, KU baseball will be 40-16.
Do you have a favorite player and why?
If I had to say one player, I would say Devin Neal. He's a multi-sport athlete, plays baseball and he does football, hard-working, goes hard every day, times in practice. Yeah, he's definitely going to carry us to make that 40 mark, maybe to the playoffs.
Devin Neal, because he's a two-sport athlete. He's most athletic on the roster, and I like the game he brings.
Do you think that we'll get a bid for this year's NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty confident in them.
Thank you so much for your time. Well, there you have it. Back to you guys in the studio.
You may not hear it at first, but it's there. Our chant, rising. On this summit, callings converge, voices unify into a chorus that sounds out for good, for greatness. Can you hear it?
Thank you for tuning in to the very first Playmakers Unscripted. There's a whole bunch of content, but don't forget that the KU hockey team is playing in the border war against Mizzou for the ultimate showdown tonight, and the Kansas men's basketball team hosts Texas for their last home game tomorrow before the Big 12 tournament next week. Reminder, there's no show next week, but Lily Wachowski and Maya Peterson will be covering the women's tournament, while Sydney Clark and myself will be just down the street covering the men's tournament. Stay tuned to our Instagram at PlaymakersKU for all of the live coverage at the Big 12 tournament. Enjoy your weekend, everyone, and remember, it's not about the game you played, but the plays you made. Rock Chalk.